I just remember like when I got there, and the reason I went there wasn't because I wanted to do insurance. I don't think anyone wants to do insurance.
It's not your passion.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I'm passionate about it now, but I like at 21, 22, I don't know that you get fired up to do insurance.
Being 22. Listen, let me tell you about this policy.
Let me tell you all about it.
So good.
Yeah. Let me tell you why you need to buy this policy. Well, and that's one thing where I like that's like the life insurance sale.
Yeah.
That I could never do. I give credit to those people that sell like life insurance
products.
That's a hard sell. Like I was always selling business to business. I was always selling employer-based insurance, and I did that. I was really successful there. I had a great career. I loved it, and you just look forward, right? It continues to get better, and I mentor kids from healthcare management and insurance. Go up there, talk to them about what the real world's like.
Paying it forward.
Paying it forward, right?
Welcome to Mission Control. At Peralta Design, we launch brands. But for now, let's launch right into this episode.
3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Welcome to this episode of Mission Control. This is your host, Ramon Peralta with Peralta Design, and we launch brands. And we've got a special guest in studio, the one and only Sean Rabinowitz.
Let's go.
Welcome. You are the partner and president of Procyon Benefits from Procyon Partners.
That's it.
Absolutely.
It's what I do. It's what I do. And I am honored to be here, man.
I mean, this is a long time coming.
A long time.
Right?
I mean, this is like years. And like I've sat here and I've watched, like Elena Cahill and Lorraine and other people in the network that I know come on. I'm like, I got to get a seat at the table. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
You're finally here, man. We can't wait to learn more. And you're just such a great example of servant leadership. And, we got to know each other at McGivney when you were board president. So we can't wait. But first, of course, we're all fans of hip hop here, but our man Cameron came on CNN.
Hey, Ma. Hey, Ma.
That's all he needed to. That's the thing. That's the one thing he didn't say that he could have said.
Oh.
But Abby Phillips, I love her to death. Her face was just mortified.
What do you do? You're live on the air. I don't know how you wrangle that.
That was 100% live?
That was live.
Yeah.
That was live. Somebody thought it would be a good idea. Like, okay, we need a rapper to comment on the whole Diddy travesty, and he comes on air and he's sipping on this little like pink juice that apparently is his own brand,
right,
of aphrodisiac.
So he starts
libido driver.
He starts to plug right. He doesn't even answer the question.
No shame.
Nothing, no shame.
No shame. Zero. He's literally like, this is I'm about to clap some cheeks, and this is the horsepower joint. Literally, those were his words.
And I saw it. I don't think she understood what.
No, I mean, she was probably like shocked of like what's happening. And he had no value to add to the commentary at all.
He was angry. he was like upset that he was like, I mean, shame on CNN for booking him, but he also took it, right?
He did.
Yeah.
I mean, he's gone viral with it, obviously.
Good for him.
I wonder if he got any sales off of that.
Entrepreneurship. I'm sure. I'm sure.
The podcast too, right?
Yeah.
Did you have the Cameron album?
I don't think so.
I definitely bumped that. It was probably late 90s.
Well, I wasn't buying albums, but definitely, there were battles.
Well, you and I were buying cassettes.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Now we got to go there.
Yeah, we got. Well, I'm
I wasn't buying. I was recording cassettes off the radio.
Yep. Commercials
and all, but it was like, hey, I mean, listen, growing up in Providence, I go to New York, record tapes, and come back, and people would like steal the tapes because that's how the mixes. We didn't have that.
Yeah.
In Providence, we had like 1 hour on a Sunday on a particular station. I think it was WBRU that they would play hip hop, and so you had this small window.
Were you hustling the tapes when you were there?
Sometimes.
Let's go.
Yeah, because you can you'd have the boom box with the double cassette.
Entrepreneurship at the early stage. There you go.
My man.
And
got real nice with the pause button.
Entrepreneurship. Apparently, 50 Cent is the one who made out the most. I guess.
Oh yeah, he's a killer. Yeah.
Netflix won the bidding war for his documentary on the whole Diddy thing. Which it's crazy to me. I knew that he was.
I haven't watched it, but it's like the fall of Diddy or something.
No, right. And I don't know if it's official. I don't know that it's officially released yet, but I mean, good for him. I knew that he had some production power with stars and how
right.
Power was awesome.
Power,
exactly.
That was awesome.
So I guess he leveraged that same that same know-how, his experience there to.
I could have sworn that was out before the video released.
There's a bunch of things on video. If you go on YouTube, like dozens.
He's just known to be a bad person. For a very long time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Like,
Insiders.
I knew he was a hustler, right? I knew
Yeah.
he was a hustler, but you kind of I respect the hustle, but I didn't know he was a scumbag.
Yeah. The insiders now are saying like, oh yeah, we knew it all along. But I think his
one of those
brand,
open secret things where it's like amongst that room
industry.
they knew.
Well, it's like Harvey Weinstein, right? Like
part of it is that you're associating yourself with so many good brands around you. Like the people that have become successful through him by no fault of their own are very talented. Like all these musical groups, and Mary J. Blige and 112, and so when you're around them, it's like their brands kind of elevate you. And so with Harvey Weinstein, you got all these actors, all these great movies,
right?
So and then in the industry, it becomes closeted or secretive to mention because you're trying to promote something always. You're trying to put the best face out there, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, look at what he did with Ciroc for Diageo, right? Diageo, I think, owns that now. Yeah. I mean, he built that brand.
Yeah, but everybody's cutting ties with him. Speaking of brands, like Peloton came out and said, like, we are not using his music in any, Macy's, because he had a clothing brand. I think I might have a Sean Combs tie or something, or Sean John tie, in the closet somewhere. So all those companies are dropping him. But in better news, I just got back from the state of the city of Bridgeport. Mayor Ganem assures us that the city is strong, and there's a lot of positive things coming out there. It was a who's who, of folks, which it always is, and it was at the amphitheater. It was a great event. Dan Anafri always does a great job.
He does
organizing it. He's a beast, and so got to see Dre. So we're very excited about CT United and the announcement coming out soon. We're as folks that don't know, we've been working on the brand for months, and we can't wait. Till that gets revealed. It's very, very exciting. But
you're a good brand ambassador.
Yeah,
I mean,
thank you.
Telling the story, seeing everything you're working on, telling the story. And I mean, look, I watch the news. I'm a fan of Bridgeport.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was an MLS.
Oh, yeah. MLS Next Pro,
That's huge.
It is huge.
It's huge, and it's huge. I mean, if you look at Bridgeport and you say, hey, do we want a casino or do we want a professional sports team?
Yeah.
I'm all for
absolutely.
Who's going to argue with that?
There's a void. We're all. I mean, our Knicks. We love our Yankees. We love our Giants.
Huskies. Well, maybe the
Huskies.
Right
now, if you leave this state, like I said, I frequent. We go to Florida quite a bit, and you see people on the walking trail. Everybody there, at least in Central Florida, is a transplant. They're wearing Yukon gear. Yep. Like that's become synonymous with like repping the state.
Yeah.
So that we're hungry for a professional, like out of the big five, we don't have our own team, and CT United is going to fill that void.
And we have a huge. Yeah. I mean, when you look at soccer from the youth perspective, Fairfield County, Connecticut in general puts out so many top prospects.
And the league wants access to that talent from a young age, and there hasn't been like a real pipeline. So we're hoping this is going to bring a lot of good, but. A gentleman that I know gave me his card, and it was a kind of a throwback. Jose Velasquez, shout out to him with Carriage Trade Solutions. But he gave me a card, and it was like raised letter business card, and it was just a throwback to the thermography where all the cards back in the day, they used to get baked, and then the ink would like almost like a shrinky dink.
Yeah,
the ink would like bubble up, and then so when you get it, you get this tactile century.
You got your real American Psycho out.
On
that, the touch.
The first thing I do is my thumb start moving, and I immediately picked up on it. But it's still it's a throwback. A lot of people are using the QR codes now on their phones, and LinkedIn has a great feature where you tap and your QR code comes up, and it's great for networking. But there's still something to be said for the old school way of communicating. And I want to segue to you, Jorge. Tell us a little bit about email marketing or email in general.
Sure. And we just wanted to cover a brief bit about email marketing in general and how you can get into people's inboxes and get the word out in so many different ways. And there's so many strategies to it. And it's one of the things that can get overlooked easily when you're putting together your website for the first time. Whether you're a small business that's just starting out, whether you've been in business for forever, if you don't have an email list going, you're doing yourself a disservice, because it's one of the easier ways to get into people's inbox and to be able to spread the word. So the great part about building your email list is that once someone comes to your website and decides to subscribe, now you have an opportunity to communicate with them. You know what I mean? And it can be seasonal. Let's say you have something for Mother's Day, for Christmas, for Easter, for your summer sale, whatever it is, you have the opportunity to now communicate with them on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And you can make it easy for people to be able to subscribe by giving them some sort of incentive. So whether that's, hey, you have a wealth of knowledge, you have something that you know that they would love to know, right? So let's say you have the top 10, let's say you are an electrician and you have like the top 10 things to look for when you're purchasing a new home, and, electrical things to make sure you watch out for. That can be one, oh yeah, I'd love to know that. Okay, sure. You've got a PDF, you'd be able to hook that up. Hey, give us your email. We'll be glad to share that with you. Then when it comes around for all those seasonal things, the person who then bought a house may be looking forward to do an upgrade with recess sliding. Now you put your promotion out and bam, you have your discount.
Get a generator. But I like to think they're giving you permission to market to them.
Exactly.
That's really, but you've got to give some value. You can't just spam people.
Exactly. And so giving them value is one of those big things. And then you give the people the opportunity to opt in, to say yes, because that's really the biggest thing, right, is wanting to get that. Once they've given you permission, now the marketing is going to be that much more effective. You're going to be able to get to them because they've already said that they want to hear from you. So then the other important thing that people oftentimes leave behind is the ability to set up segmentation. And that just means breaking out your email list into different pieces. And that's going to let you communicate even more effectively. When you talk about marketing, you want to get the right message to the right folks at the right time. And that's what's going to give you better open rate, better click-through rate, better. It decreases your unsubscribe rates, and it lets you convert more often. So how can you break up your email list, right? You can set it up by demographic. So you can set it up by, hey, once people have signed up, you can figure out, all right, I'm going to break this list up. That way I'm communicating only to the people who want to know who made a purchase, right? Let's say that you want to be able to, you collect someone's email at time of purchase. Now you know that you have an existing customer, and you can say, hey, we haven't, I'm sure you guys have seen it all the time, whether it's a text or an email. Right. Hey, we miss you. We haven't seen you for a while. And those little emotional things are just enough to be able to get somebody to come back and take a look at what you've done. So buying behavior, knowing that you have someone who was a customer who had a good experience, you can have them come back again. Just what their email engagement period is. Well, you can just segment your email by people who have opened the last, I don't know, let's say the last 20% of the emails that you've sent out, people who've opened, you can touch on just them. So you can collect data at different parts of their process. It's going to let you communicate with them a little bit more easily and be able to communicate that much more effectively. So just want to make sure you guys aren't forgetting email list. Super effective, super valuable, and something that can be relatively easily done.
All right. Well, when we come back, we're going to speak to someone who's super valuable to our community.
Not with an email, but other types of value.
Other ways.
Yeah, in other ways I like to
we'll be sure to introduce our team, because we can't hear what Jorge's got up his sleeve for his intro right after these words. This episode here is brought to you by the Connecticut Small Business Boost Fund. It gives small business owners access to flexible funding for capital expenditures and working capital, and connects them with support services. Small businesses and nonprofits can borrow between $5,000 and $500,000 depending on eligibility and need. And you can spend how you spend the money. It could be equipment, payroll, utilities, supplies, marketing, advertising, all that good stuff. And they're very low interest over a 60 to 72 month term. You can get more information and you can apply at ctsmallbusinessboostfund.org. So tell us your story.
Man, Where do we begin? It's it's
From
not
the hood of Tashua.
from the gully streets of Tashua.
Tashua Knolls.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So it's funny, you're laughing. I grew up at the end of the at the par 3, right? At the par 3,
man.
right across the street.
How'd you make it? How'd you get through that?
I pulled myself up on my bootstraps. I mean, they talk about that, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, right? They say that to people all the time. Well, you just got to figure it out. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Make it happen.
Yeah, just make it happen. All right. Well, again, I grew up by a golf course, right? So we're not equal, right? Like, I mean, we didn't have the same upbringing. Like, that's a segue for another time. But I do laugh at that when we say you had equal opportunity to get started. Yeah.
Right.
Well, but that's a whole other subject. But grew up in Trumbull. Spent my whole kind of academic life in Trumbull. My mother always worked for the Bridgeport School District. She started as a teacher and then became an administrator. She left for a couple of years and went up to the state and was superintendent of Hamden, and then came back and was superintendent of Bridgeport. And really, I mean, that's how I got. You and I got to know each other through community. Mm-hmm. That's how I got to know. Right? Yeah. Is my mother's always been an advocate for urban education. And she was always in Bridgeport, and she grew up poor in Bridgeport. Her father was one of 10. Her mother was one of 10. So, you wouldn't know it by my last name, Rabinowitz, but I grew up in a huge Irish family. My mother's as Irish Catholic as it gets. Mm-hmm. Something that not everybody knows. I don't think she'd care if I said it. She almost became a nun. That's how
that's
Irish.
Catholic. Yeah.
That's Catholic. Yeah. And somehow she married a Jewish guy from the Bronx. So that's kind of how I think I got involved in the community. Yeah. Was my father grew up dirt poor too in the Bronx, and I think they made sure that I valued everything that we had.
The sacrifices.
Right, 100%. And they didn't, my father was a school principal, so it's not like they were in the business world. They were, they were public servants, right? And they were doing an important job of educating children. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's kind of where it got. That flavor for giving back and understanding the opportunity that I had. Not all the time, right? I screwed up plenty, more than probably most normal people do. But that's where it came from. So grew up in Trumbull, went to UConn. Got to UConn.
D1, you played sports?
Played rugby.
Yeah.
Played rugby at UConn.
That's hardcore.
4 years. Yeah, I played rugby.
You don't have CTE, do you?
We don't know yet. If you ask me, so it's funny. It's funny you bring that up because we're talking about my son playing tackle football next year. He's 7 years old. I don't really think it's necessary to put on a helmet.
No, play flag.
Yeah.
It's just not as cool. That's what the pushback I got from my son.
That's what it is. Is all his friends are doing it, and at 7 years old, do I think a kid needs to put on a helmet and run into someone else? No. But so, I was kind of playing devil's advocate with my wife, and I'm like, look at me and my friends. And she's like, yeah, look at you and your friends. I mean, if you're not they should put your picture on.
You're not helping the argument.
Right. She goes, are you kidding me? You guys can barely put sentences together. But no, I mean, rugby was great. I started playing rugby when I didn't play a spring sport. I was never a baseball guy, and we didn't have lacrosse.
Okay.
And so I got hooked up with that. I don't know, maybe I was like 13, 14 years old and played. And
it's basically football without pads. I mean,
so people argue this all the time. I would tell you that I got hit playing football. And, I was a pretty good football player. And I actually got recruited to go to UConn and be a walk-on at UConn. I got hit a lot harder playing football than I did playing rugby. Yeah. I mean, it's different when you have a helmet on, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, when you have a helmet on, you can get reckless, right?
Right.
And I know they're trying to change that to a degree. But with rugby, I mean, you have no pads, right? So you have to be,
you have to be tactful.
You have to be self-aware. Yeah.
Because you don't want to hurt yourself in the process.
Yeah. You have to you have to be
grabbing
self-aware.
and grappling. And
but believe it or not, I carried the ball a lot.
So you were
playing
fast.
rugby. I was fast. I had some wheels. It was give me the rock and everybody block, right? That was my whole thing. But at UConn, I got the academic advisor was like, well, what do you want to major in? And I thought I was going to be a teacher, right? My whole family
following your footsteps. Your parents.
Follow and I loved coaching, right? Like I was, camp counselor, loved coaching. And my father sat me down one day and said, if you want to live the life I think you want to live, don't be a teacher. He said, the world is different right now. And we sacrificed a lot. So he put that knowledge in my head, and I said, well, I guess we're the insurance capital of the world. So I said, if I get an insurance degree, and it worked out. Gainfully employed. So I had a great time at UConn. I think UConn's a different place now. It doesn't look the same. When I was there, it was like a meat factory. It looked like meat. They had smokestacks everywhere. Yeah. It really looks great. And they
built these little like Disney World kind of
that's
communities.
What I mean. Yeah. And look, it should. It's our flagship university, right? We talk about having a pro soccer. Right. We have to have a flagship university, right? We want to be proud of that, and I think it looks, and not just for the sports, right? Like, I mean, as great as I love UConn winning, I try to go as all the national championships. I also like my degree getting a little bit better, right? And
the brand,
the brand,
that it's
right?
a good school.
It's true. They're ranking UConn above Brown now in terms of what that post, or rather, once post graduation, your opportunity to get hired. It's kind of amazing how that
definitely got a good brand awareness.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about some of the programs that they have at UConn, right? Like their nursing programs, outstanding. My wife was a nursing major at UConn. Their accounting program, top shelf. Pharmacy program. They have these great feeder programs that, I mean, you're guaranteed to graduate and make great money right out of the gate. And I think UConn's done a really nice job, and I think it's a great investment that the state has made in it. And so I had a great time at UConn. Loved it. Had a great rugby career. I was just telling you that I had a wonderful TV show with a local celebrity here, Pete Finch, attorney Pete Finch.
Any reels that we can dig up on that?
So I have to tell you,
all VHS tapes.
They were definitely were VHS tapes. I think either Pete is lying or he said he destroyed them all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He actually had to, Pete took it, Pete took it really serious, because that was when he was in college. He was thinking about becoming,
going into
media, entertainment, things like that. And so he took it serious, and I used to come on and just drink and crack jokes. And I think we played, I lived next door when I was at UConn, like Diana Taurasi and Ashley Battle. They were friends of mine, and we were playing Twister, after a couple drinks. And Pete wanted to take it back to more serious. So I love him to death, but he did have to fire me. So shout out.
There was no brand alignment. There were what he was trying to build.
No, and look, to his credit, he knew it wasn't me, right? And I appreciate that. So shout out to Pete in a pinch, call Finch.
So you were at UConn during the early 2000s then?
Yeah, early 2000s.
So you'd be at Rugby House.
I would be at Rugby House. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not going to, Ramon asked, are there things
we'll protect the names of the innocent.
Ramon said, what don't you want to talk about? That. I don't want to talk about Rugby House.
It says here you're an open book.
Yeah, I am an open book.
Understandably.
Just one chapter.
This is like when Brady went up to Kevin Hart and was like, don't talk about Robert Kraft.
Yeah. We got to pause there. But yes, I did not live in the Rugby House. That place was the most disgusting rat hole ever.
Oh, gosh.
Did I spend some time outside partying? Yes. Walking over to the local watering hole Theodore's, formerly known as
Kevin with the provoking questions.
Yeah.
When you said next door to Diana Taurasi, I'm like, now I know what year you were there.
Yeah. And look, I mean, it was a blast. It was a blast. Believe it or not, UConn was the last place I wanted to go. I had actually committed to go play football at Stony Brook out in Long Island, and credit to my father. My father grew up in New York, and he knew Stony Brook, and he was just like, it's not a fit for you. Right. And my father always let me make my own mistakes. Right. But he tried to educate me, and he needled me nicely, and eventually I was like, all right, fine. And, so then like UConn was like the last place I wanted to go. Because if you go to UConn in Connecticut, it's like mini Connecticut. It's like, mini high school. But I tell people all the time, what an unbelievable place, what an unbelievable experience. And, continuing on with the alumni. So I'm still involved up there. It continues to get better. And I mentor kids from healthcare management and insurance. Go up there, talk to them about what the real world's like.
Paying it forward.
Paying it forward, right? Like, I just always believe in that. And so then I graduated, worked for GE, right? I don't know if people all remember who GE was.
Yeah,
but
since they moved, but they used to be big here.
Yeah, I mean,
they were Stanford, Fairfield, right?
Well,
Easton?
yeah, I mean, they were right in Fairfield. And when you grew up on the mean streets of Trumbull, like GE was where you wanted to be,
right?
So I was like, yeah, great.
When you get ready to get out the hood.
Get out the hood, right? GE's, right? GE's going to get me out the hood, right?
That part 3, now you're on a part 5.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm on the island green now, baby. I'm at GE. Even though I was at like GE's lowest performing unit, it was still GE.
Yeah.
And
Jack Welch, did you work under him?
Jack Welch. Well, I only worked for GE for a year because then they sold us, and we became Genworth. And so I was a group sales rep. So I went out and wholesaled their products to.
Yeah, people forget that GE had like card services.
Oh yeah,
the insurance. It wasn't just appliances.
Yeah, no.
Right?
I just remember like when I got there, and the reason I went there wasn't because I wanted to do insurance. I don't think anyone wants to do insurance.
It's not your passion.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I'm passionate about it now, but I like at 21, 22, I don't know that you get fired up to do insurance.
Being 22. Listen, let me tell you about this policy.
Let me tell you all about it.
So good.
Yeah. Let me tell you why you need to buy this policy. Well, and that's one thing where that's like the life insurance sale.
Yeah.
That I could never do. I give credit to those people that sell like life insurance
products.
That's a hard sell. Like I was always selling business to business. I was always selling employer-based insurance.
Right.
And, I did that. I was really successful there. I had a great career. I loved it. And you just look forward, right? And you say, hey, what are you going to do next?
Did you find yourself being a natural salesman, or did you go to like Dale Carnegie, or do you do any trainings?
No, I just kind of turned it on, right? You just kind of flip the switch. But just being able to talk to people isn't enough to be good at sales, right? And so you see a lot of people, and over the years, like as I've been a salesperson, managed salespeople, just because we can have a great conversation like this doesn't make you a good salesperson.
Do you think you can spot that from like where you can see the potential in somebody upon that first meeting? Is there someone like, you've got it? Like, do you feel like it's either you got it or you don't?
No.
Or you can have it, then you can foster it? Like,
yeah. I mean, I think you do. There are some certain characteristics that I think, you got to bring to the table, right? You got to be confident. You got to be articulate. And people have to like you, right? Yeah. Like, it's funny. Like, I have salespeople calling on me all the time, and I'm like, I don't like this guy. Like, and I like a lot of people, and I'm just like, how does someone like that get past the door, right? And get into sales? Because I think you need to be likable, but to a degree, you have to have a killer instinct, right? You
interesting mix of personality traits.
Yeah,
to be a little bit of both.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, make no mistake. Like, I'm a nice guy. I banter, but I sometimes I got to cut throats, right? And I know that can be a negative term at times. But look, in sales, it's you're measured by what
it's
you
that
do.
Grit too.
It's grit.
Yeah.
It's grind. Like I grinded. Like I'm not that smart. Like I'm honest about it. I'm not that like. There's no silver bullet out there for what I do. No one has that amazing product. I grind and we take care of customers, and that kind of was what I built. So when I was, I think 28, 29, I had gotten close with a property and casualty insurance. So they did like home and auto, and they did like some commercial insurance as well, like workers' comp, liability. And they said, hey, what do you think about starting a benefits operation? So I had just been a wholesaler. I had never been direct to clients before. But, I was 28, 29. I wasn't married. I was making good money, but I said, hey, I'll give it a shot. It was a startup. I took a 60% pay cut. Yeah, it was rough. It was rough. It was rough. But one thing I've always been pretty good about is being disciplined with having I always call it a duffel bag of cash, right? The get out of town cash, right? So that when times get rough,
rainy day fund.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for me, it's probably a get out of
Get out of jail
It was a
card.
bail bag, But yeah, I mean, so I had enough that I said, hey, I can make this work.
Take a chance.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, those first 6 months, I was looking at the window sometimes, like, oh my god.
Because how do you leave? So you voluntarily left GE as a big brand, like
Yeah. We had been acquired.
it became Genworth.
We had IPO'd, and then we got bought by Sun Life. All good companies. It was a great gig, and I loved it. And all I did was, go out lunch and play golf with people and get people to buy products.
Smooth.
Yeah, when you're 22 to 29 years old, it was awesome. It was awesome, and I loved it. But I said, I'll probably end up dead if I do this for another 20 years. And so, I said, hey, well, now's the time to take a risk. I had a mentor, who said to me, you got one good shot, right? If you're good at your career, and you are. If you fail, you'll be all right. You'll bounce right back. So do it, And I also had guys in the industry who they had, their time, their window closed, right? You can't take a 60% pay cut with a mortgage and kids in college, right? Yeah. So I didn't have any of that.
Right.
And
so it's like the time is now.
Yeah, and I did it. And I just ran. I ran hard. I ran incredibly hard. We built a fantastic operation. We started, obviously as a property and casualty agency, and when the business sold in 2019, 2020, somewhere around there, benefits was now 54% of the agency. So we had rocked and rolled, and we just did it the right way. Yeah. I hired people that I knew. It was funny, like these guys were kind of your prototypical, they're great guys, but prototypical insurance guys. White guys, silver hair, right? And, and here I come and I'm like, hey, and this is like 2010, 2009. I'm like, hey, I'm going to build this awesome operation, but people aren't going to come to the office, right? I said, I'm going to find the best talent that I can find, but I don't care where they live, right? I want them to be in Connecticut, right? Because I want people in the office sometimes, but we're going to be flexible. We're going to let people work from home. I mean, you would have thought that I was speaking
ahead of your time.
Yeah, I was speaking I was speaking Swahili, literally, and
in that industry too. I can only imagine.
Yeah, I mean,
because they're used to being all in cubes.
Yeah, no, that was it was like the farm, right? Like, oh man, I just remember, I still have nightmares about that. Like when I used to go to our home office, like when I worked for GE, and you just saw cubes upon cubes.
Right, you could see across.
I used to call them cubicle monkeys. I know that's not nice, but
because they pop up.
Yeah, they're their heads, like a meerkat, like that. But I mean, I could never do that. But I had a great run, and the firm was called ACBI. I had a great mentor there by the name of Dan Keene. Just a fantastic guy.
What would you say to somebody who's on the fence, right? They're standing on the cliff. They want to be able to make the jump, but they don't know if they should or not. How do you know it's the right time? Or how do you when you say that you have that one shot, how do you know that now's the time to take it?
We got it one. I mean, Jorge, the one thing I'll tell you, and when I left, when we sold and I left again, it was the same thing. Well, how'd you do it? What'd you do? Cash, right? Cash cash makes risk easier, right? And I'm not saying you gotta have millions, but it's a good reminder that most Americans don't have 6 months saved, don't have a year saved. And so I think at times, I think people are tied to jobs that they don't like because they're afraid to take a risk.
They're going paycheck to paycheck.
They're going paycheck to paycheck, right? So they're like, oh my God, I don't know. What if I get fired there? What if that doesn't work out? What if I don't like it? Well, if you put some money away, you're a little bit, more secure. I know it's easier for me to say because people listening who know me, will go, well, you made, more, you make a lot of money. It's easier for you to put away. I also spend money too, but I think the two transitions that I made, the way that I was able to equate the risk, I also gave myself a time frame. Right, as I said, hey, I need to be here within a certain amount of time, or this just isn't going to work. Right. And I think anytime you go in and you're in business for yourself, no retreat, no surrender, right? And you got to be willing. You got to be willing to do that. And I think that's the difference with some of the, like, you know. And I'm not a millennial hater by any means, but I think that idea of risk, right? And to achieve things in life, I do believe there's risk, right? You know, if there was no risk, it'd be communism, right? Like everyone would make the same, right? And you know, and that's a you know, it's a general statement, but I think, you know, there has to be some risk if you want to, you know, take a new job, right? Or you want to make more money. You have to take on a risk. And look.
And some people win and some people don't.
Yeah. And look, I'm a risk taker. You know, my youngest sister is incredibly smart. She's incredibly talented. She's an accountant. She is as risk averse as it gets. You know, she's been in the same job. She's very happy. She doesn't, you know, doesn't really have a huge desire to climb the corporate ladder. Every couple of years she looks and she gets more money or something, but she doesn't take the risk.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you know, and when I was young, I always said, I looked around at my friends and I always said, why aren't they doing what I do? Why aren't they working, you know, like nights and weekends? And,
They're not you.
Well, and everyone's like, I just thought that's what everyone wanted.
Yeah.
And then when you realize everyone's got a place in the world, right? And everyone plays a role. And, you know, whether you're the lowest guy on the team, you're still on the team. Right. And what you contribute is important. So, yeah, we flipped ACBI to a larger corporation. And, we had to do that. It was the right thing to do for a lot of reasons. And the new organization was great. They left me alone. But I was 40 years old, and I was making more money than I ever thought I'd make in my lifetime. But I just said, where am I going to do the next 15, 20 years, right? Like during COVID, like I never stopped to think about, like, you know, when we were selling the business and, you know, transitioning, I was like, and COVID happened. And I looked in the mirror and said, what do I want to do? And I just said, I think I got another runway. I think I can, you know, build it again. And that's what I did.
So that's Procyon?
And so Procyon was existing.
Okay.
Procyon Partners is wealth management and 401k consulting, retirement plan consulting. And those guys are rock stars. Knew them for years.
So you built the Procyon benefits?
I came over. I built the benefits arm, and we you know, I always love this because you know, we consider ours because Procyon is a star. It's the second most popular navigational star next to the North Star, and so you know, we call it the Procyon rocket ship. And you know, we're on fire. We're on fire. But you know, that's kind of my deal.
But how did you guys had an existing, you knew guys there and said, hey, I'm going to come in and build something?
Worked with them for years.
Okay,
yeah, worked with them for years. So I used to
just because our listeners kind of sometimes you hear I did this, I did that, but we skip over like how exactly.
Yeah. So I worked with them for years. Like so we had a working relationship and a friendship too. You know, they were guys I trusted and respected. And, you know, I just went to them and said, hey, here's what I'm thinking. They're like, let's do it. Let's do it. And so that was another big risk because that was a different risk because now I had a mortgage, I had 2 kids, you know, and you know, a boat that I had to pay for. So not that anyone feels bad for that, but you know, it was a risk. It was a much bigger risk.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, and during that time, you were also chairman of the board for McGivney Center.
I was, and you know, I think as much as I'm driven by work, and you know, I do like, and I think it's because I love my job. I love what I do. That I've never known what it feels like to get up and not want to go to work. You know, like they call it, the Sunday scaries. Yeah, I've never had that, and I consider myself lucky. But I think the other thing that's always motivated me is being involved in the community. And, you know, I talked about that early on with my parents. I also had a high school football coach, Coach Jerry McDougall, who got me into Special Olympics, helping with Special Olympics. And, you know, I was probably 16 years old. I'm now 43 and I'm still coaching Special Olympics. Wow. You know, I coach Special Olympics flag football in Shelton. I'm on the Special Olympics board. I've done it consistently since high school, college, and after. And it's things like that, you know, get me excited. I love that.
Is this something your parents instilled in you to make sure you give back?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think, growing up on the, in the streets of Trumbull, but I spent a lot of time in Bridgeport, right? Like, I worked at camps in Bridgeport, right? And Sheehan Center.
It takes
right?
empathy. It takes empathy to be that way, because not everybody that grows up middle class or upper middle class lives in a way that's paying it forward like you are.
Yeah, and I think it was just exposure, right? I think it was exposure, and also, my parents they were first generation to go to college, and they did well, a lot better than their parents, but they still knew what it was like to be poor, right? And I think they always reminded it. I had always had the beater car, right? Like my parents made sure we understood the value of things, and that it's important to help people. Incredibly important to help people. And people do need help, right? Like, I know there's, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, Yeah, sometimes, right? But other times people really do need help. And there does need to be some safety nets in the world. Sometimes I think we move the needle too much, but look, at McGivney, I think it was probably almost 10 years ago, Terry O'Connor was the board president. It was the, executive director. And he said, why don't you come join our board at McGivney? I said, where? What? And I had no idea what it was. He was also the executive director of the Sheehan Center, which I loved. Sheehan Center was a great place. And then I fell in love with McGivney, and I know, Lorraine was on, and, you're on the board, but, for those of who are listening who don't know, it's a, community center on the east end of Bridgeport, probably one of the most poverty-stricken areas of Bridgeport, the most underdeveloped and least amount of opportunities in Bridgeport. And this is where kids go to have a safe place, right? Like, and then here I go. I'd grown up in Trumbull, and the concept of not having a safe place when I was growing up that was never a reality. Yeah. And you look at these kids, and parents trying to do their best, right? Working 2-3 jobs, right? And the help that we gave through McGivney was meaningful. Incredibly meaningful. And I valued my time on the board. I valued my time as board president. And, I like to think that we made a difference, right? And that we grew the brand of McGivney. Thank you. Shout out to Jorge and his team for the website, because I think that was, I remember coming there and banging my head against the wall. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, we can't collect dollars online, like, and so, and look, there's still work to be done. Right. And it's not perfect. But we've always had such a fantastic board. And, I look around, and I also think when you get involved, you have to get involved for the right reasons, right? Is you have to truly want to help. And I think that was the great thing about the McGivney board, is I think everybody there really wanted to help. I know there's always some outliers to that, but I think at times people join boards to network, right? And is that part of it? Sure. But if you're expecting to get something out of being on a board,
right. You're there to give.
You're there to give, but
like Maya Angelou, she says some people wear 2 catcher's mitts. Yeah. In life, and it's like you need to take one off so you could throw something back. But it's true, and I just look at the people that I've met through the board of McGivney. Have I done business with any of them? No, right.
But I love them all to death. Here we are. We're chopping it up. Just the people I've met through McGivney, because everyone's rowing in the same direction. May have different ideas how to get there, but everyone's rowing.
We're trying to help.
Right. Everyone's trying to help. And I also think it's important to have different ideas.
Yeah. And I definitely agree, but I want to get to your challenge, because we can joke about how you grew up, but life has a way of has its twists and turns where at somewhere or another we're going to go through something. And you've gone through something really personal and come through the other side by the grace of God. I want you to just share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I guess I'll start like 2 years ago. 2 years ago, last week, my cousin Jimmy McGrath was Shelton, played lacrosse at Fairfield Prep, and he was at a party in Shelton and got stabbed to death. 17 years old. Just devastating. His parents were like older brothers and sisters to me. My son idolized him. We never missed a game, never missed a lacrosse game, never missed a football game. And just devastating. Just absolutely devastating. And I'm still trying to process it, right? And my son still asks, well, I didn't have a heart to tell him he got stabbed to death.
Right.
I just said he died in an accident.
Yeah.
And that was one of the hardest things, coming home and having to tell my at the time he was 5-year-old son. And he got it. He understood that Jimmy wasn't coming back, and just the loss that I think the community had, because he was just a terrific kid. But I do like what we're doing with the foundation, paying it forward, and gave back to McGivney, gave to Wickmans, gave to Tunnel to Towers, through the golf tournament. So I think that's great. That we're trying to continue his legacy, and that's kind of, I think, how I grieve and how I process it is by paying it forward, right, and making sure that people understand who he was and what he stood for, but hard. I'm not sure you ever recover from that. And so I was supposed to be on the show with you in September. And 2 days before I'm on the show, my 7-year-old son gets diagnosed with leukemia. Craziest thing. 2 years ago, having my cousin die was just wild. And then out of nowhere, we get this. He's a normal, healthy 7-year-old boy. He bangs around. Over the summer, he had strep throat and turned into an ear infection. We didn't, my wife's a nurse practitioner.
You get sick all the time?
Yeah.
Big deal?
No, he never got sick. It wasn't a big deal. And my wife's a nurse practitioner, so she doesn't, she wasn't like, oh my God, something's wrong. And he just never got better. Just really never got better. But he was like still 80%. He was still running around, still playing football. And the weekend before he got diagnosed, he was playing football and he was fine. He wasn't 100%, but he was still playing. Like, it wasn't a point where, oh my God, he can't do it and something's wrong. Next day he went to gym, and like his father, loved gym. Could do less with math, could do less with reading, but he loved gym, and he wouldn't do gym. And we're like, all right, time out.
That's a sign.
That was a sign. Yeah, that was a case cracker to me, Ramon. So the next day, my wife takes him to the doctor. And I get a call, and the doctor doesn't think necessarily anything of it. Just says, "Hey, we probably need a new prescription, new antibiotic," and gets blood and orders a new antibiotic. And 2 hours later, my wife calls me. She's like, "Hey, get to Yale right now." I said, "Great, I'm already there." I had taken my father to the hospital the night before in the ambulance. So I was upstairs at Yale. I went down, and we're downstairs, and my wife knew right away, being a nurse practitioner. She didn't know what it was, but she looked at the blood work and she said, "Oh, brother, something's wrong here." And within 2 hours after getting there, this poor resident had to come in, pull my wife and I into a room and say, "Hey, your son's got leukemia." And I was like, "Yeah, right." And I said, "How certain are you?" And she goes, 98%. I said, oof. So, I mean, that's heavy. That was heavy. So, now we had to go back in, and we didn't ever mention the word cancer for a couple of weeks. But we had to say, "Hey, you're not going to go home." We spent the next 35 days in the hospital straight at Yale New Haven.
I remember you called me and said, I'm going to have to reschedule.
Yeah, I was like, and that was like, I mean, it just hit me. And so, but, I think. You
had to hit the pause button on everything, I imagine.
For the first 2 weeks, Ramon, like just everything, like just.
Nothing else matters.
No noise, like just, and the next day that, he started chemo the next day, and we, sat down with the doctors, and, look, the night before, I mean, I was a hot mess. I couldn't even talk about it, right? And I'm not an overly emotional person. This is my 7-year-old son, and you hear leukemia, you're like, he may not make it, right? I mean, we got great medicine, we got great doctors, but I mean, there's a chance my 7-year-old son may not make it. And I mean, it's like earth shattering. And I was a hot mess. But the next day, my wife and I, hard hat, lunch pail, and went.
Let's do this.
Let's
fight.
do it. Let's do
We're
it.
gonna fight.
And let's go. And the doctor's like, wow, you guys are the most calm people.
But did you chalk that up to faith, or what was it?
Controlling your controllables, right? That's a big phrase of me. I know it can be cliche. What's done is done, man. He's got leukemia. All I can do now is support, right? Is support him in this path that we're going down. That's it. And my wife looked at it the same way, right? Like, there's nothing to scream and cry about. That's not going to change anything. It's not going to make him better. And so we started at Yale. That was an absolute disaster. It was. I do healthcare, insurance. My wife is in healthcare, and look, we were never huge fans of Yale, but. That was a rough go. It was a rough go. We spent 30, and the nurses there were amazing. It's the business, the administration that just didn't work. And so then we went to Boston Children's. He was at Yale for about 35 days, and then we went to Boston Children's for second opinion. They're like, run away from Yale, go to Connecticut Children's, and they were absolutely amazing.
Wow,
absolutely amazing. Every
Talk
issue
about having resources and knowing what to do, and
and that's a great point, right? Like, thankfully. I'm somewhat in the business,
right.
And so my wife understands things, but we got to be able to do better, right? We got to be able to do better.
Because the average person is gonna.
And I saw that.
He's just going to say, "Okay, we're stuck here."
Yeah, I
don't have any other.
That's what
option.
I saw at Yale.
Yeah,
that's what I saw at Yale. Is that it was the average person who didn't challenge, didn't get educated, just accepted it. And look, I mean, I know it sounds cliche and people talk about it. You have to be your own advocate. You know, in the healthcare system today, and I think in life in general, you have to be your own advocate. You have to push for what you want. And my wife is tough. She is a pit bull. Look, because she's educated, she can have the conversations. I don't understand. Like, I understand the business side of healthcare, but she understands the clinical side. And so, thankfully for that, she was able to kind of break it down to like rocks for jocks for me, right? And so that was helpful. But I mean, look, man, it was a long haul. It was 7 months, and 90% of that 7 months we were in the hospital. He was inpatient, so Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, we were home for a few days, but New Year's, really until the end of March, he was in a hospital bed. And let me tell you, as much as, we toughed it out, that kid toughed it out. Yeah. He really never complained.
He comes from some good stock.
Yeah, I mean, he's, and it's funny, Gronk sent him a video.
Oh, wow.
And best line, tough times don't last, tough guys do.
Yeah.
And that's the truth, man. We were strong for him, but him being strong made it easier for us as parents.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's something you got inspiration from him.
Absolutely.
You're there to help him.
Absolutely. Here's this poor kid, 7 years old. He's got a port coming out of his chest. He's got tubes all over, and look, he never really complained, right? Like, my father would be in the hospital for 2 days screaming and yelling to get me out of here. This kid's here for 7 months, and he really, once we went every month, like when we get past like 25 days, he'd start getting restless, a little punchy, but he just understood.
Understandable.
That. Yeah. I mean, look, I mean, if I never sleep on another hospital pullout, because we stayed, like my wife would stay Sunday through Thursday, and then I would stay Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Wow. And at the same time, we got to take care of our 5-year-old daughter. Wow. Right. So it's just trying to manage it. And if you ever think that you can win by doing this on your own and not asking for help, it's just incredibly foolish. And for someone like me, I've always given back. I've never asked for help. And I like to think that I've given a lot over the years, and I had to take a little back here. Right. And I mean,
I
just
think you had enough deposits.
yeah,
to
I mean,
make a withdrawal.
you know, but I have to tell you, everyone's just amazing,
Yeah.
right? Like, you know, my team at like, you know, you're in the right place when you don't miss a beat. Like, you know, whether it was my partners or my team on benefits,
People stepped up.
we didn't miss a beat. My clients were amazing. Were amazing. Calling, checking in, right? Doing things for sending food. Like, you know, I mean, yes, they're a client, and yes, you know, we take care of them. But I mean, clearly we fostered relationships,
Exactly.
community. You know, people were just, you know, his teammates were amazing. I mean, I just can't say enough. And our family. I mean, thank God. You know, I'm a mama's boy. I live 2 streets over from my mother. My
Still get the home cooked meals.
yeah, oh yeah. I never, you know, I pride myself. I am a mama's boy. I live 2 streets over. I never lived back with them though. I never moved back in. You know, I always lived on my own. But I definitely am a mama's boy. And so
Praise God he came through.
yeah, man, we fought. We fought, and you know, in March, right before he was out, my father passed away. So that was, you know, that was. I mean, it's sad. It's my dad. I was close to my father, but he was sick. He was really sick, and he really just. He hung on just to make sure Ben was okay.
Wow.
You know, and that was another hard thing, going up and having to tell my son, because you know, we lived 2 streets away. He was there all the time. He taught my son to read. And so going over there and you know, going up to the hospital, having to tell him that his papa passed away, that was, you know, that was hard. But he, you know, the toughness the kid had, even when he got out, right? He said, I want to go to the cemetery, you know? And I was like, all right. All right, dude, no pressure, right? And even when we got there, I was like, hey, man, you don't have to get out. And he was like, no, you want it. I mean, he was upset. He was crying.
Like a little man, this guy.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess, look, like, I remember one day, I forgot what we were arguing about in the hospital, and he said to me, well, you don't know what it's like to have cancer. And I was like,
You're right.
You're right. you're right.
You got a point.
But yeah, I mean, and so, you know.
He's an old soul. He's
Yeah,
teaching you
yeah,
a few things.
he really did. He beasted it. And he, you know, one of the most amazing things was him going back to school. And, you know, all the kids came out of the classroom and he ran through and slapped everyone 5. It was,
awesome.
I mean, it was like emotional. It was
He's a hero.
Yeah, it was incredibly emotional. Like, I mean, it's not emotional for him, but like as a parent. And then like seeing him back on the lacrosse field, you know, and you know, he's got to get back in shape, but, you know, laying somebody out on the lacrosse field, like, you know, even the other team was like excited that he laid someone out, like, you know, and I just hope that, you know, he's too young, I think, to really truly understand what he's been through. But I just hope that as he grows up, he's a little bit more, you know, empathetic and understanding, and also, you know, to a degree, has a chip on his shoulder, right? That, hey, I've been through this, right? And there's nothing you can't do, right? And that you just got to keep grinding. And you'll find your way out of it. And purpose.
I think when you go through something like that, it's like I was spared for a reason. I'm gonna do great things.
Right. You know, and I like to think that, hey, you know, we as a family got dealt that cards for a reason. To teach us something.
Right.
I don't know what that is yet because it sucked, but I'm sure down the road.
Well, you've inspired a lot of people.
I you know, I'll figure it out. But I think you just, you know, I said in my post on that, you got to keep punching, right? Like if you're getting beat up, you just keep punching, right? Like you know, the last thing you want to do is cower in a ball. You just you know, you keep throwing, and eventually you punch your way out. And you know, that I think that's been, you know, I haven't had like you know, like like a million tragedies, but that's, you know.
I know you've got places to be. This has been an amazing.
The hook. Here's the hook.
Here's a hook. I do want you to do 2 things.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody out there in business who is going through something difficult to get them through to the other side?
Well, keep punching. And lean on those around you. Right. And if you have the right people around you, they'll lift you up. Right. And you'll learn real fast. Right. Are you in the right place? Because if you have the right team and you have the right people around you in business, they will lift you up. And I've always believed that. And lean on a mentor, no matter how old you are. Right. I just had someone who's 53 who's like, I have a mentor now. I'm like, great. I'm like, I learn every day, right? And I am where I am because I learned from my parents. I learned from different mentors over the year. I think that's the most underrated thing for people in business is
They think they got to do it on their own.
they got, yeah.
Nobody does it on
Nobody
their
does
own.
it on their own.
Oh,
No, right? Like you have a little luck, but you got to lean. It's no different than like when Ben had leukemia, right? Like it took a village, right? It took a village, you know? And so that, I would say those three things,
And
definitely.
the second thing is, what would you say can inspire someone to inject that spirit of service into their organization that you have at Procyon?
I think it's part of the DNA of the culture, the DNA of the organization. You have to have a culture that supports giving, and not money, right? Like time, right? And I've always embraced that, right? Hey, because I don't believe that necessarily every cause is everybody else's cause in the office, right? I think everyone, volunteerism and giving back should be based upon what you want to do. I'm going to support it, and there are going to be team initiatives that we're going to do. I always had my team to all McGivney things, and I do Special Olympics things. Great. But look, if you want to do a one-off and go do this and you need a couple hours off, do you, right? Yeah. I absolutely believe, I believe in that. And like the stones that get broken for people that want to go out and volunteer in the world, I don't get it. Like, it's not that important, right? Like, I don't know. I've just always believed in that. I've worked for people that have kind of fostered that with me too. Good.
And lastly, please share how folks can find more about Procyon benefits and how you can help their companies.
Yeah. So what we do is pretty simple. We make employee benefits easier and better. So we work with companies on average between 50 and 500 employees on all of their employee benefits, from your health plan to your 401k. When you look at that space, there's been a lot of consolidation of people like that, what I do, and service, and everyone wants to scale and get bigger, and we want to work on big groups. Well, I like 50 to 500, right? Where the big houses, they don't want to work on it. We're going to wrap our arms around you, and we're going to take really, really good care. Over the years, we've had 99% client retention. We don't lose clients.
Amazing.
And we've had some cool brands, man. Yeah. We've had some cool brands. Audemars is one of our clients. I'm still trying to get that AP watch. Versace, until they got sold. And I think that's the other thing in business, I would say, is know who you are.
Yeah.
Right. We worked for Versace for a number of years. They got bought by Michael Kors. And Versace loved us. Donatella, didn't deal with her often, but she was big advocates of us. And when they got bought by Michael Kors, the Versace team was like, "Oh, you got to meet with their benefits consultants. They're fantastic." And I go meet with these HR team, and they're like, "Well, we outgrew this one big entity and we went to another big entity." I'm like, "Okay, check please," right? Like I'm like, here I am, the small guy from Connecticut, right? Like, forget about it. So I think that's important, is like, learning who you are and who your client is. Like, and I think it's part of your brand, right? Exactly. Like if you drive your brand, it will drive back to you.
Yeah. Excellent. And how can folks find out more, or you want to share any domains or Instagram handles or
LinkedIn,
phone number?
LinkedIn, Sean Rabinowitz, LinkedIn. I just put a post out there. I'm shocked at how Ramon instructed me on how social media worked a few years ago. I was like, he was like, stop posting things about insurance. Nobody cares. But you'll learn a lot about me if you go on LinkedIn. Yeah. I just showed Ramon I had 100,000 views on a post I just made. So thank you for that guidance. Yeah. And if you haven't called Ramon to help you on your brand, that was free advice, but you got to pay for real advice.
All right, Sean, thanks for being here and sharing your story with us.
Ramon, my pleasure. Thank you again. I'm honored to be here.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to this episode of Mission Control. Until next time, this is your host, Ramon Peralta with Peralta Design, and we launch brands.